Total darkness, suffocating, barely torn open by dead branches scratching at the face. The sound of heavy footsteps, crushing, drawing inexorably closer through the mud. A hoarse voice whispers in the shadows, very close, too close, and then a scream, a piercing scream that cuts off abruptly in the night. But to understand the terror of that cursed night, we must go back 3 days under the bright sun of the university campus. Mireille Thomas was the girl everyone looked at with a hint of envy, always dressed to perfection, wearing modern outfits of rare elegance and gleaming jewelry. She never went unnoticed. Her angelic face, her perfectly smooth ebony skin, and her flawless braids pulled back gave her the bearing of a queen. She drove a luxury car and handed out expensive gifts without ever counting the cost. And yet, a veil of shadow surrounded her. No one really knew where her fortune came from. She never spoke of her parents, never shared a single childhood memory, and yet her generosity seemed endless. That evening, in the student room she shared with Alice and Sophie, Mireille walked in with a particular gleam in her eyes. She announced that her father, a wealthy notable, was opening a huge gas station in their home village and throwing a grand celebration. Celebrities, businessmen, and politicians had all been invited. But the most troubling part came after. Mireille promised that every friend who came with her would receive a massive sum of money from her father, a sum big enough to change a life forever. In the eyes of Sophie and Lena, the spark of greed lit up instantly. The bait had been cast. They didn't know it yet, but by accepting this golden invitation, they had just signed their own death warrant.
As euphoria fills the room, a shadow of doubt begins to darken the atmosphere. Alice, the most cautious of the group, frowns. Her worried gaze shifts between Sophie's overflowing joy and Mireille's perfectly polite smile. Why this sudden invitation? And above all, why insist that only 3 friends make the trip? Alice asks unsettling questions, trying to uncover the mystery behind an offer too good to be true. But Mireille, with that icy ease that defines her, brushes off her concerns with a simple wave of the hand. She assures everyone that everything is perfectly under control, and that leaving Alice behind is purely a matter of logistics. Alice is thus set aside, almost against her will, left behind on campus with a bitter feeling knotting her stomach. In the neighboring room, the tension takes a different shape. Lena and Roland pack their bags with barely hidden nervous excitement. The air is thick with rivalry. Lena, watching her friend with a piercing gaze, tries to plant fear in Roland's mind. She hints that Mireille is hiding something dark, hoping to convince her friend to back out so she can keep the wealthy family's attention all to herself. But Roland isn't fooled. With a cynical smile, she puts Lena in her place. She knows full well that her friend is consumed by jealousy and ready to do anything to rise socially. Neither of them truly trusts Mireille, but their reckless desire to shine and pocket the promised fortune completely silences the voice of caution. The suitcases close, the choices are made. Pride and greed have just blinded caution. Without knowing it, these young women are carefully preparing their own journey into hell.
Thursday morning has barely broken over the horizon when Mireille's black sedan pulls away. Alice, her heart tight with a bad feeling, watches them leave from the campus sidewalk. The trap is now in motion, carrying Sophie, Lena, and Rolande toward a destination with no return. At first, the trip feels like a luxurious getaway. The highway rolls by, the music plays, and the city landscape gives way to green hills. Lena gazes at the scenery through the tinted window, her mind already dazzled by promises of grandeur and prestigious connections. But little by little, the route begins to bend. The paved road fades away, giving way to a red dirt track, uneven and winding. The landscape grows darker. The village houses become sparse, then disappear altogether. Mireille drives the car deep into a forest of terrifying density, where centuries-old trees intertwine to block out almost all daylight. The atmosphere inside the car grows heavy, suffocating. An unsettling silence sets in, broken only by the rumble of the engine and the crack of branches against the bodywork. And then, at the end of that endless road, the estate appears, isolated from everything. Standing in the middle of a dark clearing, a colossal manor rises, an enormous residence with dark stone facades and imposing windows that seem to watch the newcomers like wide-open eyes. The luxury is undeniable, but the place radiates a bone-deep cold and an absolute loneliness. No other building for miles around. No trace of village life. The girls step out of the car, cut off from the world, crushed by the sinister grandeur of the estate. Sophie tries to smile, impressed by her friend's wealth, but as they cross the threshold of this house cut off from humanity, their wonder gives way to an icy certainty. The gate that has just closed behind them will not open again.
The moment the heavy doors of the manor are crossed, a deep, enveloping voice breaks the oppressive silence of the hall. A mature man of colossal build steps forward, draped in a dazzlingly rich Byzantine robe. It is Chief Thomas, Mireille's father. His dark, piercing eyes scan the group with barely concealed satisfaction, while he offers an almost perfectly kind smile. He welcomes them grandly, treating them like queens, instantly easing the slight unease of the journey. When Lena cautiously asks about the lady of the house, Chief Thomas answers without hesitation that his wife will arrive the following evening, accompanied by high dignitaries and political figures, just in time for the big celebration. He insists that Mireille is his only daughter, his greatest pride, and that he wants to give her friends an unforgettable stay, where total relaxation is the only rule. But this princely hospitality comes with a condition, delivered in a casual tone that tolerates no objection. No phones for the weekend. Chief Thomas claims he wants to give them a full reconnection with nature, adding with a light laugh that there is no phone signal in the area anyway to avoid any distraction. At that very moment, in Sophie's pocket, her phone starts vibrating. It's Alice calling back from campus. Sophie answers quickly to reassure her, murmuring only a few words about the unreal beauty of the manor. But she doesn't have time to finish her sentence. One of the estate's guards, a massive, silent man, appears suddenly at her side. Without a hint of violence, but with icy firmness, he snatches her phone from her hands and cuts off the call, before walking away. In the living room, Lena and Rolande, still recovering from their surprise, obediently hand over their phones to the second guard. The trap is now locked in from the inside. Cut off from their loved ones, sealed off from the outside world, and left entirely to their hosts, the three girls settle into their rooms for the night, unaware that the net had just closed around them for good. The first night at the manor settles in like a blanket of lead. In the dead of night, an unnatural, icy cold spreads through the rooms. Lena awakes with a start, her body shivering despite the thick blankets. A terrifying feeling seizes her, the sense of an invisible but heavy gaze fixed on her from the shadows of the room. The next morning, a first anomaly strikes everyone. Mireille is gone. Chief Thomas vaguely claims she went into town to settle the last details of the reception, but the day drags on and the unease becomes suffocating. With only 24 hours left before an event meant to gather high society, the estate remains hopelessly dead. No preparations in sight, not a single decoration, no caterers, no staff moving about, nothing. A tomb-like silence hangs over the property. Consumed by doubt, Lena tries to question a maid she crosses paths with in a hallway, but the woman carefully avoids her gaze, her hands trembling. In a barely audible whisper, the servant murmurs words that send a chill down Lena's spine. "You should never have come here. Run while you still can." Then she disappears quickly. The second night plunges into pure horror. As darkness once again wraps around the manor, sinister whispers begin echoing through the walls. Lena sits up in bed, her heart pounding fit to burst. A hushed, distorted voice clearly calls her name. "Lena, Lena." The sounds seem to rise from the depths of the house, from the sealed basement. Paralyzed with terror, she curls up under her blankets, praying for daylight to come. By morning, reality strikes with brutal force. Sophie doesn't show up for breakfast. Her room is empty, her bed perfectly made, as though she had vanished into thin air. When Lena and Roland desperately knock on Chief Thomas's door, no one answers. Sophie has disappeared without a trace, becoming the very first victim of the evil trap now closing its claws.
In the afternoon, as panic devours what little courage Lena and Roland have left, Mireille finally reappears at the end of a dark hallway. But she is no longer the bright, warm girl from campus. The mask has completely fallen. Her angelic face is now eerily still, and her dark eyes, once sparkling, have become completely empty, glassy, as if struck by death. When Lena begs her through tears to say where Sophie is, Mireille doesn't utter a single word. She simply stares at them with a dead gaze, devoid of any humanity. That is the breaking point, realizing that every extra minute in this cursed manor brings them closer to their end. Lena and Roland decide to flee immediately, through the impenetrable forest. Meanwhile, miles away, guilt eats at Alice down to the bone. 2 days have passed with no sign of life from Sophie. Consumed by a crushing regret for having initially lied to her friend's parents to cover for her, Alice finally breaks down and tells them the truth, her throat tight. Panicking, the family rushes to the campus with Alice to get Mireille's exact address from the administration. In the austere office, the commotion gives way to a deathly silence. The administrator goes through the records, checks the computer files, types frantically on her keyboard. Then she looks up, her face drained of color. No student named Mireille Thomas has ever been enrolled at this institution. No administrative trace, no file, nothing. The world collapses beneath Alice and the terrified parents. The truth strikes like a thunderclap. Mireille was never a wealthy, mysterious classmate, but a spectral predator, a perfect lure using the illusion of friendship to draw in her prey. Without wasting a second, the family goes to the police. Thanks to the last cut-off call Alice received before the signal was lost, investigators managed to triangulate the position of Sophie's phone. The sirens light up. The police race toward the edge of a cursed forest, known to be cursed, beginning a race against time to save whoever can still be saved.
Dry branches snap like whips across their faces. The slippery mud traps their steps, but Lena and Roland do not look back. They've barely crossed the manor's gate when the sound of heavy, rhythmic footsteps echoes behind them. It is no longer the polite, attentive host hunting them, but Chief Thomas, his face twisted with murderous rage, flanked by his armed guards. In the darkness of the dense forest, he advances with the certainty of a predator on his own territory. Breathless, lungs burning, the two girls run until their legs give out. Suddenly, Roland trips over a gnarled root and crashes hard into the wet earth. Lena stops, eyes wide with fear, and reaches out her hand. "Get up!" her survival instinct screams. But Roland's face twists, contorted by abject panic. Realizing they cannot both escape, Roland makes the most cowardly choice. She grabs Lena and shoves her violently backward, throwing her to the wolves to buy herself a few extra seconds. Crawling through the mud, tears blinding her vision, Lena feels the monster's presence closing in. Chief Thomas is only 2 steps away. His hand reaches out to grab her. Lena closes her eyes, waiting for death. But suddenly, gunshots tear through the silence of the forest. 2 police officers burst out of the bushes, weapons drawn, and slam the ritualist violently to the ground. Sirens light up the canopy in the distance. Pulled from the earth by helping arms, Lena collapses in tears, saved at the very last second.
From the jaws of hell.
At the police station, the atmosphere is ice cold. Sitting in the interrogation room under harsh neon light, Chief Thomas at first keeps a haughty silence, but when an inspector says Mireille, the monster's mask shatters. His gaze goes fixed, almost childlike in its panic. "Mireille isn't my daughter," he whispers, his voice twisted with dread. "She isn't human. She's a shape-shifting spirit, an entity that wanders between worlds. I've used her for years to lure naive young women and feed my pact for wealth." But Chief Thomas's voice falters. He understands the terrible truth. By letting a survivor escape, the pact has been broken. It is no longer prey the spirit demands. It is his own soul. Suddenly, seized by a fit of raving madness, Chief Thomas jumps up screaming. He sweeps the table aside, breaks free of his restraints with superhuman strength, and bolts out of the room. He races through the station's hallways, laughing hysterically, driven by unseen visions. He rushes outside, dashing into the dead of night. A sharp screech of tires tears through the air. The impact is brutal, unbelievably violent. Chief Thomas's body is thrown into the air before crashing heavily onto the asphalt. Silence falls. The pact maker is dead. Sophie was never found. Lena survived, but her soul remains broken forever, haunted every night by the whispers from the basement and the memory of her own greed. This story reminds us of one fundamental truth. Greed and envy blind the mind and lead us into gilded traps. Evil doesn't always wear a frightening face. Sometimes it takes the exact shape of everything you've always dreamed of having. Never forget that the most dangerous traps are the ones you walk into willingly.